Hello people, welcome to Globe Minds. In recent weeks, Bangladesh has experienced a dramatic political upheaval that led to the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. What began as a protest by university students against a controversial quota system for government jobs soon escalated into a nationwide movement that challenged Hasina's 15-year rule. In this video, we'll explore the timeline of events from the initial protests to the ultimate ouster of the Prime Minister, and discuss the uncertain future that lies ahead for Bangladesh. The spark of the protests. The protests began on July 1, 2024, when university students initiated blockades, disrupting roads and railway lines across the country. Their demand was clear: the abolition of a quota system for public sector jobs that they believed unfairly favored loyalists of Hasina's ruling Awami League. Despite the intensity of the protests, Hasina, who had just won a fifth term in January, dismissed the students, saying they were wasting their time. The escalation of violence. The situation took a violent turn on July 16th, when clashes between protesters and pro-government supporters in Dhaka resulted in the first recorded deaths. 6 people lost their lives. In response, Hasina's government closed schools and universities nationwide. Just 2 days later, on July 18th, the violence intensified further as students rejected Hasina's appeal for calm and continued to demand her resignation. The protesters chanted "Down with the dictator" and set fire to the headquarters of Bangladesh Television, along with other government buildings. To curb the unrest, the government imposed an internet blackout, but clashes continued, leaving at least 32 people dead and hundreds injured, even as a curfew and soldier deployment were enforced. Supreme Court verdict and continued unrest. On the July 21st, Bangladesh's Supreme Court ruled against reintroducing the controversial job quotas, a decision many viewed as supportive of Hasina's government. However, this ruling did little to satisfy the protesters, who demanded the complete abolition of job reservations for the children of freedom fighters from Bangladesh's 1971 independence war. The unrest continued to grow, with the public increasingly viewing the government's actions as an attempt to maintain power at the expense of fairness and justice. A nation united against authoritarianism. What began as a student protest against job quotas had by now evolved into a broader movement against Hasina's increasingly authoritarian rule. The government's crackdown, including internet blackouts and the deployment of paramilitary forces, only fueled public dissent. Tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets, demanding Hasina's resignation and accusing her of turning Bangladesh into a nation where power was concentrated in the hands of a few loyalists. The army sides with protesters. On August 4th, the situation reached a critical point. Hundreds of thousands of protesters clashed with government supporters, resulting in 68 deaths, including 14 police officers. Former Army Chief General Iqbal Karim Bhuiyan publicly urged the government to withdraw troops and condemned the killings. The current Army Chief, Wakhruzzaman, stated that the armed forces always stood by the people, signaling a significant shift in the balance of power. The fall of Hasina. On August 5, 2024, amid mounting pressure from both the public and the military, the Army Chief announced that Sheikh Hasina had resigned and fled the country. The news triggered jubilation among protesters, but also led to widespread looting and disorder in Dhaka. Hasina, once celebrated as a pro-democracy icon, had become a symbol of the very autocracy she once opposed. Her departure marks the end of an era, but also plunges Bangladesh into a period of uncertainty. What's next for Bangladesh? Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus has been appointed as head of Bangladesh's interim government, following Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's resignation and flight from the country amid deadly protests. In a related development, former ministers Zunaid Ahmed Palak and Hassan Mahmood were detained at Dhaka's Hazrat Shah Jalal International Airport. Meanwhile, in India, External Affairs Minister S.J. Shankar informed the Rajya Sabha that the government is closely monitoring the evolving political situation in Bangladesh, particularly concerning the status of minorities, after an all-party meeting was convened by the center. The world watches closely to see how Bangladesh navigates this critical moment in its history. Thanks for watching. Stay with us to know more about the events around the globe.